Welcome to Kenpo University. My name is Al Babinick and I'm your instructor. I'm doing an experiment, okay? So it seems like people forget the names of techniques and you say, do twisted twig, do tripping arrow, do this technique, do that technique, and people get lost. Now those of us that have been doing it for, 15, 20, 30 years, we know the technique names, that's fine. But if you're getting stuck on technique names, I'm doing a little experiment, so stick with me here, okay? I want you to say the name of the technique every time you do the first move. I took a poll of a lot of the people that I teach, and I found out that a lot of times you remember how to do the technique when you associate the name with the first move. Not necessarily what the name means, that helps, okay? But if you associate it with the first move and an idea, you're going to remember the technique names better. And I'm going to give you examples, all right? So if I was doing shielding hammer, I want to say shielding hammer as I go through. So there's the shield, whether it's outward block or slightly up if it's an overhead punch, and then there's the hammer. So it's shielding hammer. So that helps every time you do the technique, though, you want to say that. Now, twisted twig is one of those techniques that people have a tendency to forget what it is when they get further along through the system. So it's just a front arm lock or a front wrist lock. But people forget what it is. So when you do the technique, every time you do the technique, I want you to just in your head or out loud to say what the name is. So you just want to go twisted twig. So you just want to go, they got me, twisted twig, as you're stepping in and doing the technique. All right? An example of a technique where you might remember part of it, and again, if you haven't done the technique in a while, tripping arrow. The name is actually more like the middle bit of the technique than the beginning. So the arrow, it's a forward bow and arrow stance is the full name. We just call it a forward bow nowadays, but it's actually called a forward bow and arrow. So you trip him with the forward bow and arrow stance, okay? So that's why it's called tripping arrow. But that doesn't help you remember the first move. So when you're doing tripping arrow, whichever way you do it, when you do the first move, you're grabbing the shoulder, and you have to say to yourself, tripping arrow, okay? So you say tripping arrow as you're doing that first move, and keep doing it over and over. And every time you do a technique, doesn't matter what it is, when you do the first move, say the name of the technique. The only problem I see is a lot of techniques. I just did a whole video on the group of the left foot forward, left inward block techniques, dance of death, thundering hammers, etc. As you go through, they kind of start the same. Okay, maybe some have a parry, some have a block. They kind of start the same. But those are like the really fun techniques that you remember anyhow, okay? So it might not be a problem, but I want you to try, especially if you forget. If you remember some techniques, 5 swords. Oh, everybody knows that one, right? Thundering hammer's another one. Oh, everybody knows that one. Leaping crane. Absolutely, everybody knows that one. So you don't have to do those techniques so much if you've already got them memorized. But the ones where you forget, get those down. Say the name every time you do the first move. Thank you for watching this video production from Kenpo University.